that even longer because you wouldn't have the labor. I mean, I know this work needs done too, I'm just curious.
Well, I think that in an ideal world we would be able to flush a quarter of our system. That would be ideal. With the amount of water loss that we have, we're pumping a lot of water into our system. So in my opinion, that's not a solution to flushing, but it does keep the water fresh. We do not have a lot of water sitting in our tanks for long periods of time or in lines, with the exception of the dead ends. There are a number of dead ends that do require some flushing. Those could be done. We've tried to set aside labor for those, and we are typically just overwhelmed with just dealing with keeping the system going. That means that we're maintaining pumps, we're replacing pumps, we're pulling pumps, we're responding to leaks, maintaining equipment, all of those various things that fill up a day. And so in an ideal world, it would be great to have the flushing done. There are some steps that I think need to take place first. The first is a hydraulic model. Second would be for a high velocity flushing program to be designed by an engineer. Once that's concluded, then the district could go out and we could start that process and see what that, how much work we can actually get done.
So you don't really know
No,
if you
it's
would
an
need
unknown.
extra labor or not?
Well, no, I know in order for us to do a quarter of the system or any flushing at all, really, we would definitely need extra labor. From what I have right now, I have 4 operators, including myself. And in order to do flushing, that's not just a response to a complaint, we would most definitely need some temporary summer help.
So that's my question, is by approving this, it could possibly take away from any kind of decisions of flushing this summer.
Well, and I don't think we're ready. We still need to get hydraulic model.
Right.
We still need to get, so there's other steps that need to be taken before it would set us up in a position to effectively deal with the flushing.
And are those steps in the budget and the operating plan, or are they just steps that we know needs to be taken and we don't really have a plan?
First steps, yes, the first steps were to gather all of the valve locations. That was the first step, and so that is was completed last summer, and and the updating of that process is taking place on a monthly basis with our GPS consultants. So they are updating the map and taking all of that information that we collected and putting it into a format where it can be used by the district. The next step would be for a hydraulic model. From what I can see, it's not the priority. The priority has been the backup well. The district has lived with one well since I've been here. So that's been our main priority, is to get the backup well. That well is drilled at this point, but it still needs a pump and some various other equipment. So that's really been the main focus of our efforts. Dealing with the wastewater treatment plant, the issues there, closing out the capital improvement projects. So all of those have taken precedent over continuing on with the hydraulic model. So it's in the plan. We've discussed it at the strategic planning meeting that we have annually. But our bottom line is we are doing what matters most, the musts. And that is the redundancy on the well is the big step. And there's a couple other transfer stations that only have one pump in them. And so we're trying to work out a situation where we can get 2 pumps in those.
So can I just move forward to, if we have a plan, and the plan is to flush a quarter of the system each year?
Well, that's a goal.
A goal, so
yeah.
a long-term goal.
That's the wastewater though.
No, that would be
No,
the
it's
distribution
constant.
system as well.
Yeah.
So it would take 4 years to flush the system, but in the meantime, we still would have to retain a high level or the proper level of chlorine, because one clean area can be contaminated again by an area
Sure.
that hasn't been cleaned.
Sure.
So there's no guarantee that flush one small area, you can reduce the chlorine at all.
It's ongoing maintenance. It's
Yeah.
just like dealing with the fire hydrants. That wasn't being done 3 years ago, and now it is. And so we're building an effective operation where we are dealing with our infrastructure and maintaining it in an effective economic manner. It takes time to work those systems out, and you have to build it from the ground up. So, in my opinion, we're doing great from where we came. And there's plenty of steps to be taken and a lot more work to be done. It never ends, and the level of efficiency can always be improved. And we're always looking for ways to do that. We never have any concept that it's just take it for granted. We always want to improve.
So it sounds like what we need, though, because we don't have the answers today, is for you to work on a policy and the associated costs to bring it back to the board to look at and consider.
For a flushing program?
Right, because we just don't, we
Yes.
can't answer
Right.
any
And maybe
of,
come up with some goals of
right.
when to implement it.
And then you can look at, based on that cost and labor needs and whatnot, look at whether to do it in a phased approach and,
Oh, okay.
and maybe those types of things. And then the board
Absolutely.
can have all the data in order to make that determination, since we're kind of shooting in the dark at this point, it sounds like.
I agree.
We know kind of what it's gonna take, we just don't know what the specifics are.
Yeah.
But even regardless of what we need to do with the chlorine,
Right.
which is another
Okay.
question,
Right.
we still need to flush the system anyway.
Yeah.
Because
In an ideal world, yes.
we need to flush it anyway.
So you're not required by law, it's just what people do.
It is an industry standard. I do not believe that there is any statutory compliance.
Uh,
It's also, you're protecting the system by doing it.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, with regard to the summer labor,
Yeah.
Okay,
we've
so
got
Do
a
we need
motion
to- Yeah, you made a motion.
Yeah.
by Mark.
You made a motion. Okay. Does anyone want to second that?
I'll second.
Great.
Discussion? All in favor?
I just like to say that last summer was such a successful program with these
Why
young
was it?
people, employing young people from the
That's
area
great.
who otherwise, I don't know what they'd be up to, but did a fantastic job and
Yes.
that would otherwise be incredibly time consuming for a full-time
Mhm.
paid employee, so
Yeah,
it's
it
a
went,
really
it went
good
quite
program.
well.
Yeah.
It went quite well, and we have about 600 more manholes to locate and put into the system, so. And we'll have that done.
And
Roughly,
how will-
roughly
Will
what's?
you advertise those positions, or how will?
Well, there's only one available for the GPS, and since we already have training into Zach Potter, he would be the first person that I would pursue. Then we've just conducted interviews for operators, and so I'll just go down the list on those interviewed applicants and see if they're still interested in working.
So that motion was passed?
Yep.
It
Wasn't
was.
passed.
Okay. Should we move on to capital improvements?
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I just had a question about what's the total budget that we just approved. So just roughly, what is that summer?
It's about $10,000.
It's a treasurer kind of question.
That's right. It's good to be roll figures.
Get too excited.
I'm not.
This is as exciting as it gets.
Right.
Okay. Capital improvements. Brad, SCADA control equipment installation, status of?
Real quick, I'm Brad Simons. I don't know
Hi,
if
Brad.
we have met.
We have.
Cal, I don't think we've met. I'm with Olson Associates, been working with the district for a couple years now on capital improvements and general operations issues in consultation with Steve. So, the SCADA component, I was actually just in the office with Dave, who's reworking some of the programming that was developed by EPGI as part of the capital improvement project. We're going to enhance the alarm notification system, make it a little more operator friendly. The operators are learning to use the system. I was actually just reviewing some of their tracking stuff, and we're going to make some recommendations on it. But like everything, you know, if it's mechanical, electrical, it's going to give you fits, and they've had some of those times. They are learning to work them very well, though. I mean, they're starting to, if we have a problem at South Crestone Tank on day 1 and another problem at South Crestone Tank on day 4, you know, by the time day 7 comes around, they got it figured out. They're looking at changing out relays or testing the radio units to see what's really causing those problems. And I think they're really starting to pick those things up. They have a lot of new equipment to learn about, and I think Stephen has done a good job of starting to develop daily check sheets for each of the facilities. I was down this morning at the wastewater treatment plant. We're putting in a new ultraviolet disinfection unit because the old one was, again, causing them fits and was not supported by the manufacturer anymore. It was an outdated model, and we found a more reliable system that will help you to assure you maintain compliance at your wastewater plant. You've done a very good job with it for the last, I don't know, 18, 19 months you've been in compliance. We don't want a UV failure or a fecal coliform to put us back out of compliance as we try to tie up some loose ends. So in doing that, they're troubleshooting some of the startup issues with that, making sure that the lamps aren't going to overheat, that we're going to be protective of a brand new piece of equipment that's put in service. Steve was down there yesterday, and we talked about let's figure out what are the 6 to 8 things they need to look at every time they walk into this building on that piece of equipment. And they can look at UV transmittance, and you know, what alarms did occur. We'll get that all tied into the SCADA. That's part of what Dave's doing here. So I think that the functionality of the SCADA, you know, although not where I think the district originally wanted it to be, but through the course of the design, got it to a certain point that now we can really enhance it and figure out what information do we want to capture out of it.
Do you want to tell us what SCADA is?
I'm sorry. And stop me at any point, guys. Engineers do that all the time. We use a lot of abbreviations. It's a supervisory control and data acquisition. So it is essentially monitoring everything from the Casino Park lift station to the motel well facility, the Well 18 site, the Aspen wastewater treatment plant, all the way out to the Cottonwood tank site, up Moonlight, Brookview reservoirs. And it's gathering that data, and you can pull up screens at some point in time if you have an opportunity to get with the operators, and you can see the trending of when tanks are filling and when they're draining, when pumps are coming on, when they're coming off. And I think it's really helped Stephen and his staff understand the system a little bit better, because I think they spent a lot of time in years past running from facility A to B to C to D to move water and do things that they weren't really able to sit down and think about what is really happening in the system. They were just reacting to a need in the system. Now I think they can proactively forecast. They can go back and troubleshoot an event because there's trending information, there's historical data that's captured on there, and they're starting to use it. When there's a problem, they call our office, we talk through it. They're really getting a grasp on how do they deal with the problems that they encounter and how do they prevent them from occurring again.
Great.
So, any questions on how that's all going? And I do encourage you at some point in time, if you have 15 minutes,
Yeah, we want to
grab the guys and look at some of the stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Free time. Yeah, sure.
We also talk,
The whole system.
Picnic, bring your sack lunch.
I'd like to see
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Seeing the GPS
It's
in
a-
the office,
I'm making
what they do when they.
it's also referred to as
Let those guys
telemetry
run that branch.
too. It's also referred to as telemetry,
Yeah,
so,
that's-
yeah, so if you hear SCADA or telemetry, we're talking about the same thing.
And
So instead
for,
of driving around, they look at the screen when they come in the morning.
Right.
And the driving around was what, an hour and a half
yeah.
every morning, so.
And we still have to do some
stuff.
rounds because we don't have the system complete. But
Right.
for Cindy and Kyle's benefit, Brad Simons is the difference between success and the nightmare that we could have had.
Yeah.
And so that was money well spent. He's been incredibly helpful to this district, just for the entire time since he's been hired. And so I can't speak highly enough about him and his service to the district. It's been very, very fortunate that we have him, and helps us on a regular basis with really important stuff. So thank you, Brad.
Well 18 replacement.